Come closer. The shadows have missed you, and tonight they have a new story to tell. Welcome to Scary Stories After Dark. The payphone stood beneath a busted streetlight like it had been forgotten on purpose. Metal slick with damp, the plastic hood yellowed and fog-stained, the coin return packed with old grit. The kind of phone you only used when you didn't want a call traced back to your own walls. He had been standing there too long. His breath kept blooming in small white bursts, vanishing the moment it appeared, as if Shroud didn't allow proof of anything warm. The handset trembled faintly in his grip, not from cold, from the way the voice on the line made his stomach tighten into a hard knot. He swallowed, tongue sticking to the roof of his mouth. "I told you," he whispered into the receiver, keeping his face angled away from the street. "I can't, not this time." Silence. Then, something like a laugh. Not loud, not human. More like the sound a moth made when it beat itself against a porch bulb over and over, desperate and stupid and determined. The line crackled. A breath that wasn't his slid through the speaker, intimate as a mouth beside his ear. The payphone glass behind him was fogged, but he could still see movement there. Not a reflection. A shadow crossing the pane like a passing figure. Too thin, too tall, not fully shaped by the light. His heart stumbled. "Please," he said. It came out wrong. Smaller. "I did what you wanted. I did everything. I've been..." The whisper cut through him, and it wasn't a sentence so much as a decision. He squeezed his eyes shut, and for a moment he saw it, pale wings dusted with gray like ash, a soft thump against glass. Again, again, again. The air smelled faintly sweet, like bruised flowers, like something left too long in a warm room. "I'm not doing it," he said, forcing steel into his voice. "Find someone else." On the other end, the whisper shifted, closer, lower, until it sounded like it came from inside his skull. A name slipped through, not his. A woman's name. He froze. His lips parted, but no sound came out. That was the rule, wasn't it? They never took from you first. They took from what you loved. He slammed the receiver down so hard it rang in the cradle. The streetlight above him flickered once, twice, then steadied like nothing had happened. When he turned, the glass behind the payphone was clear again. No shadow. No figure. Just the town damp and waiting, pretending it hadn't heard. He walked fast, cutting behind the bakery where the alley narrowed into a vein of darkness that never saw daylight. The smell of sugar and yeast was faint here, swallowed by the wet cold. He didn't see the moths at first. They were small, quiet, perched along the brick like bits of soot. Then one lifted its wings, and in the dim glow spilling from the bakery's back door, the pale pattern on its body looked like a skull. His breath caught. Something moved deeper in the alley, soundless, patient, and the temperature dropped so sharply it felt like the world had stepped away from him. He backed up. The moths lifted together in a slow, deliberate swirl. Not a frenzy. A gathering. And as the alley darkened, just a shade darker than it should have, he realized with sick clarity that he had not ended anything at the payphone. He had only told it where to find him. The cruiser died just past the rusted welcome sign. It didn't sputter or complain, just cut out like someone had turned a key somewhere else. The engine ticked once, then went quiet, leaving only the hush of fog sliding across the road. Cora Vance rested her forehead against the steering wheel for a beat longer than necessary. Tell me we didn't just break down in a town that looks like it eats people. Dean Wayne leaned back in the passenger seat, peering through the windshield at the sign half swallowed by mist. Welcome to Shroud. Drive safe. No, he said. That would require this place to look welcoming first. They stepped out into air that felt wet against the lungs, not cold, heavy, like breathing through cloth. The town beyond the trees sat low and dark, lights few and dim, streets curving in ways that didn't quite make sense. Somewhere deeper in the fog, something clinked, wind chimes maybe, or glass. The gas station across the road looked closed despite the light glowing inside. The pumps were old, handwritten signs taped to the windows. Everything felt stalled in the wrong decade. A man inside the station watched them through the glass without moving. When Cora raised a hand, he turned away. Friendly, Dean muttered. Inside, the phone on the wall didn't work. The man behind the counter said the auto body shop was closed. Jet would be back in the morning. He didn't offer help, didn't ask questions, didn't ask where they were headed. As if it didn't matter. The motel sat down the road, squat and tired, its vacancy sign buzzing faintly. Their rooms smelled like old soap and damp carpet. The wallpaper peeled at the corners. The window overlooked nothing but fog and trees pressed too close together. Cora set her bag down and frowned. You feel that? Dean shrugged off his jacket. Feel what? Like the air's listening. They didn't laugh. The diner was the only place open. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow. An older waitress stood behind the counter, Rose according to her name tag, her face drawn, eyes distant. She poured coffee without asking. No one else spoke. A booth near the window held 5 teenagers, their voices low, laughter forced. They glanced up when the detectives entered, then quickly looked away. Not fear. Something closer to irritation or warning. Dean slid into the booth across from Cora. Ever notice how towns like this don't want outsiders? Cora stared at the coffee, watching the steam curl and vanish. For just a second, she thought she saw something dark flutter through it, wings brushing heat. Then it was gone. Outside, the fog thickened against the glass, and something passed by the window too smoothly to be a person. Cora didn't turn to look. Kylie woke to the sound of something tapping. At first, she thought it was rain, though Shroud hadn't seen real rain in weeks. Just mist, just fog, just the constant damp that never quite became weather. She lay still, listening, breath shallow, counting the seconds between taps. Tap, tap, tap. Glass. Her eyes opened. The window beside her bed glowed faintly blue from the streetlight outside. The curtain stirred, though there was no breeze. She turned her head slowly, already knowing she wouldn't like what she saw. A moth clung to the glass. It was larger than any she'd ever seen. Not huge, not monstrous, but wrong. Its wings were pale, dusted and gray, veined like dried leaves. It didn't flutter, it didn't panic. It simply rested there, facing inward as if it knew exactly where she was. Kylie's throat tightened. "Go away," she whispered, hating how small it sounded. The moth stayed. Its wings lifted once, settled. Tap. Kylie pulled the blanket up to her chin and squeezed her eyes shut. When she opened them again, the window was empty, just fog pressing close, swallowing the light. She didn't sleep after that. By morning, the town looked the same as always, quiet, gray, pretending nothing had happened. Kylie met the others behind the old grocery store, the one that never reopened after the fire years ago. "I saw one," she said without preamble. Athena swore softly. Brian stiffened. Joe's smile faltered, then reappeared too fast. Robert went still, eyes sharpening with something like dread. "Where?" Robert asked. "My window." Silence settled heavy between them. "First visit," Athena said. Not a question. Kylie nodded. They didn't say the rest. They never had to. That night, Brian stayed on Kylie's floor with a baseball bat he pretended was for comfort. Joe cracked jokes that didn't land. Athena paced. Robert wrote dates in a notebook, his pen pressing hard enough to tear the page. At 2:17 a.m., the tapping came again. This time, it wasn't the window. It was the bedroom door. Tap, tap. Kylie's heart slammed so hard it hurt. Brian shot to his feet. Athena grabbed Joe's wrist. Robert whispered, "Don't open it." The handle didn't turn. The tapping stopped. When Brian yanked the door open, the hallway was empty, except for a single pale moth resting on the carpet, wings folded neatly as if waiting to be acknowledged. Joe swallowed. That's two. Somewhere outside, deeper than the trees, something moved, slow and deliberate. Its presence felt more than heard. And Kylie knew with sick certainty that the third visit wouldn't ask permission. It never did. The woods outside Shroud did not feel like a place people were meant to enter at night. Cora Vance stood just beyond the motel's edge, cigarette unlit between her fingers, watching fog coil between the trees like something alive. The air smelled faintly sweet again. Bruised flowers, rot hidden under perfume. "You ever get the feeling you're being paced?" Dean asked behind her. Cora didn't answer right away. She'd felt it since the diner, since the payphone report crackled over the radio earlier that evening. Another body found, details thin, location behind the bakery. "Yeah," she said quietly. "Like we're not lost. We're being allowed." They headed back inside. The motel hallway lights flickered, buzzing low, casting shadows that stretched too far across the carpet. That night, sleep came in pieces. Cora dreamed of running, bare feet striking wet earth, lungs burning, not from something, but toward it. She woke with a gasp, heart pounding, the taste of fog in her mouth. Something passed the window. not a reflection. A shape slid across the glass. Too smooth, too tall, its outline blurred as if light couldn't decide what to do with it. The street lamp outside dimmed for a breath, then steadied. Cora sat up slowly. The shadow lingered for half a second longer than it should have. Then it was gone. Across town, Kylie stood frozen at her bedroom window, fingers digging into the sill. The street below lay empty, fog pooling thick and low. She'd been awake already, waiting, listening. That's when she saw her. She moved along the edge of the road without touching it, her form darker than the night around her. Tall, thin, shaped like a woman but unfinished, her outline wavering as if stitched together from shadow. She didn't walk. She glided. Whispers slid through the air around her, not words, not quite, fragments that brushed Kylie's skin like cold breath. Names, half pleas. Apologies that never reached an ending. The figure never looked up. But Kylie knew that if she did, it would mean something had gone wrong. In the woods beyond the houses, pale shapes shifted. Antlers caught faint light. Wings rustled softly, patiently. The shadow passed on. The street light flickered. And somewhere deep in Shroud, something ancient marked time, not with hours or days, but with heartbeats. Cora sat on the edge of the motel bed until dawn, gun untouched on the nightstand, pulse still racing. She didn't write it down. She didn't tell Dean. But when morning came, she found gray dust on the windowsill, fine as ash, and a single dark scale clinging to her sleeve. Outside, the fog thinned just enough to reveal the woods. Waiting. They told Brian not to go outside. He went anyway. The third visit didn't come to Kylie's house. It didn't come to Athena's or Joe's or Robert's. It came to the edge of town, where the trees pressed close and the road thinned into dirt, where Shroud pretended it ended. Brian stood beneath a dead streetlight, fists clenched, breath fogging hard. The moth hovered just beyond the beam, pale wings catching the weak glow, body still, patient. One more step, Athena hissed from the sidewalk. Brian, don't. The moth lifted, drifted closer. Brian's jaw tightened. I'm not doing this. I'm not walking into the woods like some offering. The air shifted. Not colder, heavier. Kylie felt it behind her ribs, the way a storm presses before breaking. Joe reached for her hand without looking. Robert stared past the moth, eyes wide, tracking something none of them wanted to name. A whisper slid through the fog. Brian flinched. It wasn't his name. It was his mother's. The sound barely existed, more pressure than noise, but it punched the breath from his lungs. The moth settled at his feet, wings folding neatly as if waiting for an answer. Athena swore. That's the rule, she said, voice shaking with fury. That's how they make you move. Dean and Cora arrived just in time to see Brian stagger backward, face drained of color. Cora's hand went instinctively to her holster, then stilled. There was nothing to aim at. Nothing solid. What's happening? Dean demanded. No one answered. Kylie stepped forward, tears burning hot but unshed. "If you don't go," she said quietly, "they take someone else." The whisper came again, louder this time. Closer. Brian dropped to his knees, a sound tearing out of him that wasn't quite a sob. "I can't," he said. "I can't do this." The fog parted just enough for her to appear. The runner stood at the edge of the light, her shape unfinished, her presence bending the night around her. She did not look at Brian. She did not look at anyone. She waited. Cora felt something brush her shoulder, light as dust. She looked down. A moth clung to her sleeve. Still, watching. Brian pushed himself to his feet, shoulders shaking. He didn't look back at his friends as he stepped toward the trees. He didn't look at the runner. He followed. Behind them, the streetlight went out. And Shroud, faithful as ever, swallowed the sound of footsteps disappearing into the woods. The woods opened without welcoming them. Branches bent away as Brian followed the runner, her shape a moving absence ahead of him. The fog thinned between the trees, turning silver and blue, the ground slick beneath his shoes. He didn't know how long they walked. Time didn't move right here. It pulsed. The death moth people waited in a hollow where the trees leaned inward, antlers catching what little light existed. They stood in a loose ring, tall and wrong, their faces a terrible near mirror of humanity, eyes reflecting pale, wings folded tight to narrow backs, hands long and careful, not eager, expectant. The runner stopped at the center. She did not turn. Whispers gathered around her like breath against skin, names, apologies, prayers spoken too late. Brian's knees buckled. He would have fallen if Athena hadn't caught his arm. She'd followed. They all had. Kylie's fingers dug into Robert's sleeve. Joe's breath came fast and shallow, his eyes darting between shapes that refused to hold still. Cora and Dean stood just behind them, the boundary of the hollow prickling like static against their skin. "No," Cora said, the word useless as it left her mouth. A low sound rose, wings brushing together, dry as paper. One of the moth people stepped forward. Another mirrored it. The circle tightened, slow and deliberate. Robert swallowed. "It's not a sacrifice," he whispered. "It's a transaction." The runner lifted one arm. The whispers stopped. Silence fell so hard it rang. Brian stared at the shallow cut on his palm, how it had appeared there, sudden and stinging. He couldn't say. Blood welled, dark and warm. It dripped into a shallow basin of stone at the runner's feet, already stained with old rust and dust. The moth people leaned in, not to feed, to witness. Kylie's breath shuddered as the air filled with a smell like iron and crushed petals. She felt it then, the wrongness threading into Brian, stitching itself into his bones. "Stop," she said, even as she knew it wouldn't. The runner lowered her arm. The circle loosened. The moth people stepped back, one by one, antlers fading into shadow, wings whispering as they retreated into the trees. Brian sagged forward and then stood, alive, breathing, His color returned too quickly. His eyes were too bright. Relief crashed through the group, sharp and disorienting. Joe laughed once, a broken sound. Athena swore and wiped her face with the heel of her hand. Cora exhaled, hands shaking. For a moment, just one, she believed they had won something. Then she saw it. At Brian's wrist beneath the skin, something pale shifted, just a flicker, like folded wings settling in. And deep in the woods, patient as rot, the cycle closed its jaws. Time moved again after the woods. Not all at once, not correctly, but enough. Brian went home, so did the rest of them. Shroud settled back into itself with the relief of a thing that had been fed. The fog thinned during the day, thickened at night. The diner stayed open. The motel vacancy sign buzzed. The bakery's alley was scrubbed clean. No one spoke about what had happened. At first, Brian was fine. Too fine. The cut on his palm healed overnight. His appetite sharpened. His eyes caught light strangely, reflecting pale for a split second before settling back into brown. He complained of headaches, of dreams filled with wings brushing his face, of a sound like whispering paper just out of reach. Kylie watched him the way people watch storms they know are coming. A week later, gray dust began collecting on his windowsill. Athena noticed the way he stood still sometimes, too still, head tilted, as if listening for something beneath the noise of the world. Robert wrote less. Joe tried harder. Laughter became something they performed carefully, like a ritual meant to keep worse things away. Cora and Dean left Shroud at dawn on the 8th day, the cruiser running smooth as if it had never failed. No one waved. Rose didn't look up when they paid. The teens stood across the street, close together, 5 shapes resisting the pull of the fog. "You did what you could," Dean said as the town fell away behind them. Cora didn't answer. Miles down the road, the light shifted. A moth drifted across the windshield and vanished into the trees. Dean didn't notice. That night, in a roadside motel far from Shroud, Cora woke to the sound of wings. She sat up, heart racing. The room was empty. On the nightstand beside her badge lay a single gray scale, fine as ash. It hadn't been there before. She brushed it away, her fingers trembling. Outside, just beyond the reach of the parking lot light, a shadow passed between the trees. Tall, unfinished, moving without sound. It didn't stop. It never did. Back in Shroud, Brian stood at his bedroom window as fog pressed close, a moth resting against the glass. He lifted a hand, not to shoo it away, but to mirror it. Its wings opened. So did something beneath his skin. Deep in the woods, antlers caught moonlight. Pale shapes gathered, patient, eternal. And the town breathed out, content. The cycle endured. Epilogue. Years later, Kylie still noticed moths before anyone else did, the way they gathered near certain windows, the way the air thickened just before dusk. She never said much, only taught the younger kids where not to stand, which lights to leave off at night, which roads to take when the fog rolled in heavy. When they asked why, she smiled the way adults do when the truth is too sharp. Sometimes, late, she thought she saw a woman-shaped shadow pass between the trees, moving with careful purpose, never stopping. Kylie would watch until it was gone, hand pressed to the glass, and whisper names into the dark, not as a plea, but as a promise. Love, she had learned, was the only thing the cycle hadn't figured out how to take.